review this beautiful Zeiss 1x8x30 Riflescope. Is this the ultimate hunting riflescope? Well, let's check it out and hopefully we'll answer that question.
Shut up and sit down.
When you're thinking of best-in-class, low-power variable optics, I'm sure you're thinking of manufacturers like Burris or Leupold or Nightforce. It's got to be Nightforce, right? Or Vortex, maybe Vortex, Trijicon, or maybe a Euroglass and the Schmidt and Bender, Swarovski, or Steiner, Tangent Theta, amazing optics. Or how about March? Minax, Valdata, or maybe you're more of a workman guy and you think it's Bushnell. But no, if money is no object, if you're going for the best scope out of the market, I gotta say, it's the Zeiss. Yeah, the variable power optic, best hunting scope available in the industry today, in my opinion, is this guy right here, made by Zeiss. Something that I think is very surprising. Zeiss is not the most renowned, well-used scope in the United States. They don't really market themselves that well here. So it's not something that we really, mark as a go-to, but Carl Zeiss is a premier optics manufacturer in the world, and that's no question. You just go and take a look at the very high quality camera optics they make, the microscopes they make, the healthcare equipment. This is a legit company, and so they're not making anything that they kid around with, and this is their top of the line version. So we take a look at this unit. You can see that it's very well made. The ocular has the adjustments here. Here is the, for the magnification, 1:8. Here is where you turn the illuminated reticle, which is just a dot. But this is very slick because if you point it up or you point it down, the the reticle shuts off. One thing I like about it too is that when you turn it on by pressing this button, there is no settings on here. You just rotate it to increase the magnification or the illumination, and counterclockwise. It doesn't matter where you're at. And you, again, up, down, it's off. Hold the button. It shuts off. The turrets are clearly hunting turrets. And let me show you, real quick what these look like. And just because they have caps on them doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a good tactical turret. But when you look at this turret, you'll see that the graduations on it are very fine, very difficult to see. It's very good for sighting in because you can adjust it and then you just pop it up and then rotate it to your zero, and then there you go. So when you're on the line, sighting it in, that's pretty easy. But take a look at this. This really comes through with the German. Look at what it says on here. 1/3 MOA per 1 centimeter per 100 meters. So that's not exactly convenient for really anybody to use here. So it's not something that I would want as a tactical, rifle scope. This here is just simply the battery, and then of course your windage adjustment. So what makes this guy so good that it's the best there is? And as we mentioned, there's a lot of scope manufacturers out there, so it would seem kind of surprising, right, that the best one coming out would be from Zeiss. But let's take a look at why that is. Let me compare it to a Vortex. Now, I'm not saying that the Vortex unit is in the same class, but I have this Vortex unit, and they're very similar in how they're designed as far as everyone else. Everyone else seems to do what Vortex does with this. Let me grab it. Of course, this is on a gun, but you can get a good idea of what you're seeing here. Look at the size delta in the main tube. Not only is this a 36 millimeter tube, it is a 30 millimeter ocular. The other manufacturers, like Nightforce, they have a 34 millimeter tube, but they only have a 24 millimeter optic or ocular. This is a very efficient design, and Vortex does a very nice video talking about the fact that it isn't just about the size of the tube, it's about the optics that are in there. And I don't disagree with that one bit. Again, this Vortex Strike Eagle is not in the same class, although I would say this is, for the money, the best one on the market. But if you're looking for the ultimate hunting scope, which what is that going to give you? That's going to give you the clarity, that's going to give you the magnification, and that's going to give you the light transmissivity when you're in the morning and when you're in the evening, because that is clutch in the morning and evenings, how much light is being the transmissivity at those times, because we know that's when they like to move, particularly in the evening. In the fall, the deer like to come out, and that's a critical time. So if you're looking for this all-round optic, which I think a 1x8 is really a tremendous all-round optic, it's really good in the woods, close range, you can run it at 1 power. It's really good for shooting out to 300-400 yards by bumping the magnification up, sitting it on some type of rest or finding a tree or something like that. That's really a terrific way to do it. So in those clutch times, you really want as much light transmission as you can get, and this one gives you that. No one else has this. So yes, its main tube is only one characteristic, but what is the quality of the optics in there? And the Carl Zeiss optics, are really in a class of their own. They're second to none. Maybe you could argue that tangent thetas are as good, or maybe you could argue that a Schmidt and Bender might be as good, but they're certainly not better. And some argue that the Zeiss optics are actually better. When you consider the scope of the optics that they make and the quality of the optics that they make for photography, you could understand that that's a reasonable argument. Real quick here is kind of do a rundown of some of what we would consider, or I would consider, the major competitors in this market, where I would consider a go-to. So I wanted to take a quick look, and I mentioned this before, but I wanted to go over it with you. Here's the Attacker. This is their 1x8, and we notice that it's 21 ounces. It in fact has a 34 millimeter main tube, like I was referring to, and it has a 24 millimeter objective. MSRP is at $2,500. Another one that I really like is This Leupold Mark 8. This MSRP is at $3,000. And again, has a 34 millimeter main tube. And, is in fact a 24 millimeter objective. The weight on this one's a little bit heavier. We see it's 23.5 ounces. So that's heavier than the Nightforce Attacker. And we'll see that the Zeiss is actually right in that same weight range. And let's take a look. So here's the Zeiss. And scroll down, take a look, and it's 21.2 ounces. The inner rail, if you're not familiar with that, I'd go out and take a look at it. It's probably not something you're interested in. Apparently in Europe they like that, mounting them on a rail instead of on rings. We don't really see that in the United States much. But you see 30 millimeter objective and a 36 millimeter main tube. So it's not only a very large main tube, it's very efficient to get a 30 millimeter objective. So I think you can see how you're going to get better light transmission. You're going to also get better field of view. And I hadn't mentioned that earlier, but that's another thing. If you go ahead and compare the field of views, this one's going to be the best. The one that I would consider the closest would be my number 2 pick, would be this Trijicon. The optics, of course, on a Trijicon are not going to be as good as a Zeiss, or I would even put them necessarily on the same as Nightforce. Maybe about Leupold, but you'd have to compare them back to back to back to really see this exact. But I really like this scope. You'll notice that. Let's go to the specs. How did I lose the specs on this? Oh, there. Sorry about that. So the weight is pretty chunky, 25.6 ounces. So that's really the biggest attractor for me. But look at this. It's got a 28 millimeter objective and a 34 millimeter main tube. Now, how did they do that? Well, they actually got an objective bell. You'll notice that here. This is the only one of the primary, or the first tier manufacturers that do that. Of course, this one has very nice tactical turrets on it as well, and the other ones do too. The ones I showed you, the Leupolds and the Nightforces. But remember, I was talking right from the beginning about the fact that I was talking about the best hunting scope, and I don't think having tactical turrets on it is really a requirement if your primary thing you're going to be doing is hunting with it. And if we just wanted to validate the price, here's on Optics Planet. It is running $2,900 for the least expensive illuminated mil dot, and $3,800 for the holographic dot. The Zeiss is running $2,750. So I just want to wrap up this video review of the Zeiss 1x8x30 Victory V8. I do think it's best in class. I do think it's definitely worthy of your time checking it out. And maybe you wouldn't have put it into your showcase of items that you would have looked at in the past. But I think after seeing this video, hopefully you will. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Shut up and sit down.